House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tonight urging House lawmakers to join her effort to shut down the president's national emergency declaration. She's expected to get the measure to a vote tomorrow. So let's bring in California Republican Devin Nunes, ranking member of the House Intel Committee, for his take. Great to have you with us tonight, sir. What do you make of this vote tomorrow?
I don't think I make much of it. This is just more politics. It's going to be interesting to see if the Democrats actually put the votes on the board. I have a funny feeling that they won't get all of the Democrats to vote for it. There'll be a lot who actually do want border security in this country, and you'll get virtually no Republicans.
All right, I want to play a little something from Congressman Gregory Meeks, one of your Democratic colleagues. He says that Democrats have to rein in the president because he's gone completely out of control. Here's what he says.
The American people understand that we have a president that is continually trying to divert from around the Constitution, and, you know, as his friends Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, that he wants to be, he does not want to follow democracy. Congressman,
your response?
Well, if you go back in time, the facts are that the Obama administration was the one that were very close to Putin. If you remember back during the election, Mitt Romney, the Republican nominee, was talking about Russia being a big problem. Obama actually said publicly that the 1980s called and wanted their foreign policy back. So, I mean, look, it's normally whatever they accuse you of doing. This is actually, you know, they're the ones that actually supported Putin, not the Republicans.
And obviously this week, there have been a lot of headlines with your name woven in as former and fired FBI official Andrew McCabe is out supporting a new book and trying to sell it. I want to read a little bit of what he said in his book and give you a chance to explain. He talks about having a meeting with the so-called Gang of Eight, which would have included you at the time, to tell lawmakers about the plan to, or that they had opened this counterintelligence investigation related to the president. He says Nunes was suspected of having surreptitiously been given intelligence by presidential aides during a nighttime rendezvous at the House, information that was then publicized. He talked about he and Rod Rosenstein having a conversation about the fact that you were in the meeting. He says Rod Rosenstein came over and talked to you, came back to him, and then said he's not leaving. What can you tell us about that meeting? I know it's classified, but what's your response?
Well, that's the first thing I would say, is that any conversations that happened in that meeting are classified. And so if those conversations did occur, then the Department of Justice should bring charges against Mr. McCabe. I would also add that McCabe is a guy who's been a proven liar over time. There's no question that what he has in the book is total fake news. It's been disproven time and time again. So not only does he have a book that's actually libeling me and slandering me, it's actually a book that's not even true. And so, you know, you take stuff from fake news, you know, this whole idea that I had went to the White House to do something in the middle of the night. It was bogus all the time. The mainstream media can say it as many times as they want, but the fact of the matter is it never happened. So we're going to continue to fight this out in the public. We'll continue to get the truth out. And if we have to, we'll take it to the courts.
And quickly, do you think he'll face any legal repercussions? Because nearly everyone that's gotten caught up in the Mueller investigation that's faced trouble, it's been for lying to investigators or lying to authorities. You're saying that's what he's doing now.
Yeah, so I mean, he should. I mean, we already know from the Inspector General's report that he had lied. Clearly
candor.
Now, if he's well, okay, I'm not gonna get over the nuance of that. But the bottom line is that even from his book, if this book is true, he should be prosecuted on that, leaking information from the Gang of Eight, and also obstructing a congressional investigation by trying to keep me and others from receiving information. And how much additional information did we not get that we should have gotten at the time? My guess is a whole bunch, because remember, and I'll just make this final point, we still don't have the scope memo of the Mueller investigation, meaning that we don't know what Mueller's actually looking at. My guess is it's the dossier that was paid for by the Democrats that came directly from the Russian government.
Yeah. Congressman, thank you very much for your time tonight. We understand there's no mention of the dossier in the McCabe book. We'll see you soon.
So not only dumb and totally ignorant of everything, but utterly self-assured. If there were a clinical exam for self-esteem, she'd be in the 100th percentile. How do people get like that? Is it our education system? Is it high schools? Is it colleges? We wanted to talk to someone on the front lines of this who might know the answer. Nicholas Giordano is a professor of political science at Suffolk Community College, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks very much for coming on.
Hi, Tony.
So there's a certain recognizable syndrome here where the people who know the least are the most self-confident. Where does that come from?
Well, it's the lack of critical thinking that exists. It's the superficial arguments they make that are completely unrealistic. If you look at the Green New Deal, it's incomprehensible. And when you're looking at it, she says the world's going to end in 12 years. So if we go with this plan and have to rebuild every building, it took us 13 years just to build the Freedom Tower, for instance. 6 years to build the Tappan Zee Bridge. Imagine having to do every single building in the United States up to new codes. It's just not going to work. And it's that they don't ask deep questions. The arguments are, it sounds good, people will support it because it's government giving us stuff, and so it's okay. But there are real consequences when you actually talk like this, because there are people that are going to take it seriously. You have a number of presidential candidates that have agreed with her plan. And when you're looking at the plan itself, you can't understand anything in it. It would lead to millions of people being underemployed or unemployed. Maybe they could learn code, who knows. It would lead to unconstitutional state violations because state and local governments are in charge of building codes. And so my question to her would be, has she read the Constitution, knows about the 10th Amendment and state rights?
No, but you heard, wait, but I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding. You heard her say what matters is that she's a really good person and you're not. And so I'm thinking, as I'm watching this, remember that whole fad where we were supposed to give our kids self-esteem and that was the panacea? Did we create people like this when we did that?
Well, we did. Two things. The motto of the customer is always right created an entitlement culture, and then our children are precious also created the entitlement culture where everyone gets the trophy. When you're looking at it and you're trying to challenge the minds of the youth, they try and push back because they don't want to critically analyze the information to see if it really works. Page 10 of her New Deal talks about creating public ownership and receiving a percentage of compensation for the public ownership. Well, that's socialism. That's the very definition of socialism, and nobody's called her out on it in this sense. And it didn't work out so well for Venezuela. So is it really going to work out well for us?
No, not, I mean, I don't know. It's been great for, I guess, weight loss in Venezuela. They're starving.
They are,
eating zoo animals. No,
and that's part of the problem. There's no critical thinking. And not only do you have that part, you have even more concerning, it talks about persons of the United States. It doesn't say U.S. citizens or U.S. persons, which is the definition for citizen and legal residents.
No, you're right.
So that raises the question.
Anyone who shows up gets to take your stuff. I mean, you can see where this is going. Professor, we're out of time, unfortunately. I commend you for having the patience to try and train a more impressive next generation of critical thinkers. Thank you for that.
No problem.
All right, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other Democrats unveiling their radical, extreme Green New Deal today to address what she calls catastrophic climate change. The world's going to end in 12 years. Oscario, I'm calling her. Anyway, here to get the latest on whether this is the right decision based on the right science. He's the Competitive Enterprise Institute Senior Fellow, Christopher Horner, weatherbell.com Chief Meteorologist, our friend Joe Bastardi. Okay, Chris, let's start with you. You've written a number of books on the subject. If we're going to demand every business and house in the country be rebuilt, if we're going to offer free college, free housing, free health care, free retirement, free, everything's free. And the reasoning is the Earth's going to end in 12 years, so we'll do this in 10 years with only 2 years to benefit from it. That's going to cost trillions and trillions and destroy capitalism, the energy, healthcare industries, and so many others. Good idea?
Right, because it's worked not in those places President Obama used to tell us to look to see how it would work out when he tried baby steps toward this wrenching transformation of society, as Al Gore called it. We used to be the only ones not doing it. Now we're told, well, we'll be the first. You'll see this plan opens with the alarmist liturgy, but then it reels off page after page of what you noted, this progressive boilerplate about guaranteed income and so on for those unwilling to work. There's no mention of a climate impact. There's no mention of a change in temperature, which is the flag it sails in under, but there's no one who actually claims it would impact the climate. This is about the fundamental transformation You'll see in the Washington Post tomorrow a scathing editorial pointing out that you're trashing the enterprise of the climate industry here by going off on your massive project. Meanwhile, they claim it would cure these social ills. It would exacerbate badly all of them through energy poverty.
The 1970s,
killing jobs, energy poverty, and so on.
Joe, the 70s was the nice new ice age is coming. Then global warming, the Earth has the temperature, and it's going to explode in a number of years that passed already. Now we just say climate change, but it's really predicated on what? A battle against capitalism, that the premise that man on Earth is pillaging the planet for profit?
Well, first of all, H.L. Mencken, who was a Democrat, said it correctly. The urge to save humanity is almost always a false face for the urge to rule it. And I think that's what you're seeing here today. What gets me is, and I wrote a book on it, as you know, Sean, you're dragging the majesty of the creation, weather, climate, all these things I've loved since I was a kid, being dragged through the mud. It's the weaponization of weather, the weaponization of climate, the idea that the average person doesn't know what happened in the 70s or the 30s or the 40s or the 50s, like people like me. What they do is they simply take advantage of it. And, you know, I almost have to laugh at it now, because you would have to sell your soul to that world to understand that world. And that's exactly what's going on here. It's really not that much. Look, I understand the CO2 feedback argument, but the oceans have 99.9% of the heat capacity of the entire system. If the ocean's cyclically warm, the air is cyclically warm. So when the ocean's cool, the air will cool.
Well, the last thing I got to say this, Joe.
It's a pretty simple relationship.
You know every storm. You have studied weather. And, Chris, you have studied this. People need to pay attention a little bit to what you're saying. Thank you both.